entertainment channel for digital viewers.
A last gasp from BBC Two and Clarkson now, seeing us into Christmas Eve good and proper with an interview to die for.
Good evening. Two guests for you tonight. Radio 4's John Humphrys, famous for interrupting his guests, and from Formula One, Murray Walker, famous for interrupting himself. I'll also explain how to get better value for money from your turkey this year. It can be so much more than lunch. Turns out it can be a cannon too. But first, we all know that the fastest car in the world is a hire car. But who are the fastest drivers? Well, it's not people in Formula One. They aren't even as fast as the average pizza delivery boy. It isn't White Van Man either. No, it is in fact Red Van Man. Ford says the top speed of the Transit is 94 miles an hour. Not with a postman at the wheel, it isn't. Posty only slows to 94 when approaching a particularly nasty corner. So what's going on here? I mean, no one communicates by post anymore. We all use email. And children, if they want to get from one side of the playground to the other, they use text messaging. I'll tell you what I think the post office is these days. It's a secret van racing society. And the one thing that drives them up the wall is Christmas, because people start putting things in post boxes. You know, you send cards to family and friends, and you slip in a tenner for your nephews and nieces, wondering if you'll get a thank you note this time around. Well, I shouldn't think so, because when they're not out racing vans, this is what's going on at the sorting office. The thing is, though, there are still some conscientious postmen. I know this because I have had a handful of cards this year. Let me read you some of them. There's one here from John Prescott, surprisingly. Christmas year, merry new happy end. Jeffrey Arch has sent me one. I deny wishing you a happy Christmas. Now there's one here from David Beckham. Wishing you all a very happy Easter. And finally, one from Wales. Off and die, you paralysed streak of... Now, I was recently named as the third rudest person on television, which might make the encounter with my first guest tonight a little difficult, because he has a reputation as the rudest man on the radio. He's the host of Radio 4's Today programme. Famously, he once settled William Hague down and said, "Good morning, Mr. Hague. No credibility, that's your problem." Ladies and gentlemen, John Humphrys. So, Mr. Humphrys, the Today programme, not very interesting, is it?
How would you know? They don't have radios in Ferraris.
Look, I'm sorry. You've got to face life is good at the moment. Employment is low, inflation is low, nobody has an outside lavatory anymore. Nobody wakes up in a morning and says, what would make my life immeasurably better is if Cardiff had its own parliament.
It depends whether you live in Cardiff or not.
Nobody wakes up
Lots
with
of
that.
jobs for the boys if you live in Cardiff and you have a
Nobody
parliament.
thinks that.
Can I finish?
Nobody
Can
thinks
I finish?
that.
Can I finish? Huh? Is that a question or a statement?
Don't interrupt me. What's the appeal of your job? Is it politics or is it arguing?
Politics is arguing. You can't separate them. Politics is about arguing. Politics is about somebody saying, I believe this is the best way to run a country, and these are my policies. At least this is what politics ought to be about. And somebody else saying, actually, no, there's a better way of doing it. That's what we used to do in politics in this country. What upsets me a bit at the moment is that what we now do is we have people going to focus groups and saying, what do you think is the best policy on this? Then the focus group says it, and they say, oh, well, we must have that policy because that's what the focus group says. So people don't properly argue any longer. They argue about the peripheral things. They don't argue about the core things any longer, which I think is a shame, because politics is about arguing. It's about life. Life is about arguing, isn't it?
Do you argue in your spare time?
Of course I do. Of course I do. What do you mean, do I argue in my spare time?
I'm just wondering, when you get to a dinner party
Of course I
and
do.
somebody finds themselves sitting next to you, it's like, oh,
Well, they don't usually. They go.
You say, well, the
I
nice
sit
weather we've been
alone.
having. I don't know. I have no opinion on the weather. I have no clue whether it was. I've been in my cellar all day long.
Henry Kissinger told me once, the great thing about being Henry Kissinger is that because you are Henry Kissinger, the most famous man in, this is a few years back, the most famous man in the whole world, you always get invited to the best dinner parties. You always get sat next to the most beautiful girl in the whole room. And because you're Henry Kissinger, you can be very boring, and she will think it is her fault. And it's a bit like that in my business. You don't actually have to say anything, because people start kind of defending themselves before you've said anything. So you sit down and you say good evening. They say, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean good evening? I mean, is it?
I want to know what it feels like to be on the receiving end, really, of one of your... I was going to say interviews, but I think interrogations is probably nearer the mark. So if I, for instance, were to come on the Today programme, yes, I mean, if I were to say that environmentalists are supremely arrogant, and that...
You wouldn't say such
I would.
No,
They
not
believe,
you, Jeremy.
They
No.
believe that this puny little insect called man can in some way affect the climate of this gigantic planet on which we live. Now, if I said that on Today, what do you say back? Make me feel this big.
Have you got any children?
Yeah, 3.
Ages?
6, 4 and 2.
Where do you live?
In the countryside.
Why?
So that they can play in the fields and enjoy some space.
Oh, really? You like fields?
Yeah.
And you like clean air?
Yeah.
And you don't care about them breathing dirty air, or you do care about
Well,
them
where's the
breathing
dirty
dirty
air?
air?
Where's the dirty air?
You've been outside tonight? Have you
There's nothing
smelt the
wrong with it.
field?
It's air.
You know how many
It's
children?
air.
You know how many children in this city have asthma?
Yes,
compared with 50 years ago?
Yes, but I just point out...
Did you happen to know? Do you know what is causing that?
May I just point out...
I'll tell you what's causing that is people like you driving around pretending to be boy racers when you're old enough to know better, and poisoning your children and my children. So what you do, because you haven't got the strength of your own convictions, you flee off to the country where you can get to, because you can afford to do it. Some people, maybe some people here can't afford to do it. So what do they have to do? They have to live in filthy little back streets with filth from the pollution, from the cars, the people like you drive. And they have no choice. You're rich, you can afford it. That's why you don't care about the environment.
Did anyone ever intimidate you?
You mean on air, live?
Yeah.
Oh, God,
Or when you went to interview someone,
Oh,
did you...
absolutely. Yeah.
Who?
Oh. I think probably the one who intimidated me most, who has intimidated me most throughout my entire career, such as it is Maggie Thatcher. I mean, you're not... Hero! You're a hero, right? Am I right?
She did some good things.
She did some good things.
And she did the Bolton.
Indeed.
And she privatised water.
But I tell you one of the things that was incredibly intimidating about her. When you interviewed her, I'm talking to you now and we're looking into each other's eyes, more or less. But she wouldn't do that. The minute, when you're chatting to her in normal conversation, insofar as there was any, the minute that stopped and the camera came on or the microphone in the studio came on, she suddenly starts talking to the middle of your forehead. And you think, what about, you know, what? And it completely throws you, and she continues the whole interview staring at the middle of your forehead. So you never make eye contact at all. The audience, I mean, the television audience doesn't know that, of course, because the camera just sees her looking more or less at your face.
I wish you told me that before you started shouting at me. Have you ever felt tempted to hit someone?
Yeah, no,
I mean, someone being so stupid.
Not more than 4 or 5 times during a typical programme.
Really?
No, not
You know, with your
not
sort
often.
of Welsh upbringing, I know the pugilism.
Yeah, look, don't work out your inferiority complex with me. I mean, I understand you're only English, and it isn't your fault, Jeremy.
Well, actually, you're English, because
kept-
the Welsh are English. We're kind of a French, potpourri, German, Swedish
The Welsh
mix.
are English. Are we really going to get into this? How long have we got? You're German. I mean, come on.
I don't want German,
Anglo-Saxon,
I'm
no,
French,
you're
I'm a-
German.
I'm
I
an
mean,
EU
and you love
melting pot.
BMW motor cars,
I
don't
do
you?
not love the Nazi staff cars. Let's talk TV news.
TV news,
Yeah, TV news.
6 years I did it for, yes.
Yes, exactly.
The 9 o'clock news, yeah.
Do you think that these days we are faced now with the style over substance?
The fact is that it is, and this is what upsets me a little bit, is that you will never have, you'll have loads of ugly old farts like me reading the news, or had to, well, you've got a few now, the old Michael Burke and, you know,
Yeah.
and Peter Sissons. I mean, they wouldn't mind being described as ugly old farts, I'm sure. Well, it's too late now whether they were or not, is it, really? I've just done it. So, but you would never have, sadly, the female equivalent. Now, yes, you have Anna Ford, who's in that same sort of age bracket. You know,
Sure, I've thought.
Anna is not an ugly old fart. I have to say, Anna is beautiful and wonderful and all of that. But there won't be, I suspect, another Anna Ford. I mean, it seems now that you almost have to be aged about 22, and you have to have a particular style, and you have to wear particular clothes, and all of that. And I think that's regrettable, actually.
Do you think we're heading for a time when they say, and tonight's news will be sung by Kylie Minogue? I mean, if it is heading in that direction, well...
I think we're a wee way away from that. I hope so. It's a problem. I mean, radio is much more intelligent. Come over to radio, Jeremy.
Well, this is the last in the series,
Oh,
maybe.
that's true.
I have the
There you
perfect
go.
face for it, maybe that's
Perfect
the
face
answer.
for that.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Humphrys. It seems that this enormous bird has come to live in England. It's called the eagle owl, and it likes to eat wild boar. But since there are no wild boar in England, it's moved to Surrey, where it's eating puppies. There are even warnings from bird watchers that it could eat a baby. If 3 of them ever attacked together, they could eat Cliff Richard. Now, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds says that they need to be monitored, maybe even killed, which seems a bit extreme, but let's be honest. Twitchers do lead slightly weird lives. Up at dawn, into the countryside, all by themselves, to film birds basically having sex. I've got an example here of the sort of footage they come back with. Oh, Ornithology? Pornithology, more like, but let's not mock. I like the RSPB. I bought some spoons from them once. However, I do wish they wouldn't leap on the eco bandwagon without looking. They say, for instance, that the common house sparrow is becoming extinct in Britain, and that our children, if they can survive the eagle owl, are going to grow up not knowing what one looks like. Well, mine are, because I've had this one stuffed. I'm going to put it in their bedroom. Now, obviously, the RSPB has blamed this little fellow's problems on the car. But I'm not entirely certain this argument holds much water. Cars are clever, but not clever enough, in my experience, to target specific breeds. If the car was killing birds, it would be killing all of them, not just the sparrow. I've never driven a car which can, for instance, veer around a yellowhammer. But I have come up with an idea. People should stop bleating about the sparrow and start eating them. Really, if they were a £5 each at Sainsbury's, if there were £1 in it, someone would come up with a way to reverse the population fall. In fact, I think I'll get the ball rolling. Look what I've got here. Ready? Right, I'm doing this for the environment, you understand? Taste some. Tastes brown. Delicious. And I think this would work for any endangered species. The Bengal tiger, for instance. For years it's been eating us. And where's that got it? Well, there are only 4 left. So let's see if we can help them along. Look at this. Wow. Now, in the course of this series, I'm aware that I've upset a great many people. So, tonight, with the smell of Christmas in the air, I thought it would be a good idea to make up. So I've been joined for dinner by a postman, a chap from the Health and Safety Executive, a cycling environmentalist, and, as you can see on the end, an American. And what I'm going to do is cook these people a traditional Christmas dinner. As you can see, I have the turkey here, and what I'm going to do now is stuff it. We begin with a handful of Alka-Seltzers, which we've seen in the course of the series so far, have enormous propulsion capabilities. So we put those in there, and then we follow that up, I think, with, let's have some Brussels sprouts. Let's just whack those in there. Now, you should be aware that Health and Safety have recently said that you shouldn't stuff a turkey until you've cooked it, but then they're always wrong. Let's have some cranberry sauce as well. Whack that in. What do you mean, this is a traditional Christmas lunch, and then wedge it all in with some oranges. More pornithology. Right, now, that's pretty much loaded. I maybe just shove a couple of sausages in for good measure like that. Right, now then, to get those Alka-Seltzer going, what I would do is get yourself some champagne. Well, I said champagne on the instructions. They've given me dry sparkling wine from Germany. Oh, God, I can't drink that. What you do is you drill a hole in the turkey, put a funnel in it. This is above the Alka-Seltzer, and the bubbles from that should be fermenting beautifully. So we just whack some of that in like so. Okay, chaps, dinner's ready. The reason they're all looking so miserable is because they have no gravy. And to get that over there, what I've got here is a garden leaf blower. Ready? Who shall we start with? I think Health and Safety now. There we are. Oh. Have a very happy Christmas. Now, we've got one more year and then Grand Prix motor racing will never be the same again. That's because my next guest announced last week that he's going to retire from the commentary box to spend more time, presumably, shouting at his garden. Ladies and gentlemen, Murray Walker! So, how's it going to feel then, that morning when you wake up and someone else is doing the commentary?
It's not going to feel good, Jeremy, actually. I will have been doing it 52 years then, which is a hell of a long time. I enjoy every second that I do when I'm on the air and when I'm off the air. It's a fabulous life. And I don't think I'm going to enjoy having somebody else do what I regard as my job, but sooner or later you have to stop.
For me, I have to say that your greatest value in a Formula One race, which is what you're best known for, is that when it has settled down into a procession, is that I'm thinking, well, I'll go and get a cup of tea, or make a sandwich or something, and you'll go, I think, what's he saying? What has he seen that I haven't yet seen? And that's
there is no such thing as a dull Formula One race. There is, there is always something if you know where to look to be excited about.
I've looked.
It may be that it may be. Well, you couldn't have looked very hard. It may be the battle for 5th place. It may be the battle for 7th place.
No, well, I'm still a fan, I have to say, because I wait with bated breath. You know, you wait for Michael Schumacher to lose, don't you? That's the thing.
No. Wrong. At least 50% of Britain seems to think that Michael Schumacher is an evil kraut.
I'll go with 75% here.
Here is the truth. He is an extremely nice guy. I have interviewed him many times since he first made his mark in Formula One in 1991. And he's also one of the finest drivers the world has ever seen. And in my opinion, will probably go on to be the finest driver the world has ever seen. And the British public ought to give him due credit for that.
I agree. He's not an evil crowd. He's not evil. Now, one thing, when I'm sometimes presented with a baby, you know, somebody's had a baby and you look at it and think, God, that's ugly. You know, you have to find something nice to say about, pretty hands, what a lovely T-shirt it's wearing or something. Do you ever think that with some of the drivers? You know, this guy is completely incompetent, but I have to find something nice to say.
Some I like more than others, obviously, because all people are different. But I like them. They are genuinely my heroes, Jeremy, because I'm a frustrated racing driver. I didn't want to be a commentator. I wanted to be Nigel Mansell or Damon Hill or Sterling Moss or James Hunt.
Really?
I wanted to be the guy behind the wheel.
So you're not going to be rude about them because they are doing what
probably.
Even the Cathy
subconsciously, I admire and respect what they are and what they do.
Because, of course, when James Hunt joined you in the commentary box, he wasn't terribly flattering.
I didn't have a very good impression of James at the time. I regarded him as a drunken hooray Henry because, I mean, to be honest,
and more than drunk sometimes.
That's what he was at the time. And the first commentary we did together was at Monaco in 1980. James arrives, as usual, about 3 minutes before the race begins. He had a half-consumed bottle of rosé in his hand, which he then totally consumed, and the producer sent out for another one. Now, I was old enough to be James's father. It would be difficult to imagine two people who were more different in terms of temperament and background. And it took us a long time to knock the edges off each other and get to know each other. But
you nearly hit him once.
Yeah, that was at the British Grand Prix in Silverstone, and I always stand up to commentate, you see, and James used to sit down, sort of like this. And we had one microphone between the two of us, and we had to literally pass it backwards and forwards. That's to stop you over talking.
Oh right, okay.
It's very reasonable. But I was standing there chattering away, and James had had enough of this. So he catches hold of the wire and gives it a tremendous tug, and the microphone flew out of my hands into his, and he laconically starts commentating. And I was absolutely incandescent with rage because the adrenaline was pouring out of me, and I was suddenly cut off short. And I actually had my fist back. His head was down. I actually had my fist back to thump him. And the producer was a chap called Mark Wilkin, and I looked across the box, and Mark was going,
Don't hit your fellow commentator.
So I didn't.
Have you ever tried commentating on anything else?
Paul Fox, who was the great Sir Paul Fox, rang me one day, and he said, "Are you doing anything on Saturday, Murray?" It was my wedding anniversary, actually. I said, "No, Paul, no, nothing, nothing in particular." He said, "Well, I want you to go to Bristol and commentate on the Great Britain versus the Commonwealth weightlifting championships." And he said, "Don't say you don't know anything about weightlifting, because nor does anyone else, and you've got until Saturday to find out." So I got the telephone directory, and there's a thing called the British Weightlifting Federation. I phoned them. I said, "Who's in charge?" Oscar State was the man who's in charge. I get on to him. I said, "I seem to have mislaid my handbook, Oscar. Can you send one round to me?" Which he did. I phoned home, and I said, "Have we got a broom handle, dear?" "Yes," my wife said. "Why?" I said, "I'll show you when we get back." And I spent... You told me this was a family show.
Family
Well, anyway,
show.
I spent the evening practicing the press, the snatch, and the jerk, which are the three ways.
You're heading into murky deep water.
But the thing I have always wanted to commentate on more than anything else, you're going to laugh at this, is snooker.
I'm not going to laugh because I've got a microphone here.
Oh, I
okay,
told
can you
you.
take that, the proper microphone? Yeah. And we've got a clip here of some snooker. And I'd like you to give it the Murray Walker treatment.
Can I stand up? Because I always stand up.
No, do, by all means stand. By all means. Can we run this clip then, and let's have Murray's interpretation of it?
And here we are, that's Ronnie O'Sullivan, and this man is absolutely sensational. He's using the special high-grip chalk on his cue, and that cue itself is a very high-tech piece of equipment. Now, watch him. Which ball is he going to hit? He's going to hit the white ball, and he's going to hit straight on the yellow ball, and back goes the cue, and slam! He's missed it! He's missed it! Fantastic!
That was great. There have been some fantastic Murrayisms over the year, if I can call them Murrayisms.
And of course you have them there, Jeremy.
Yeah, no, I've been trawling through them. This is a good one. It's a sad ending, albeit a happy one here at Montreal. Or a mediocre season for Nelson Piquet, as he is now known and always has been.
Well, stop. Can I? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, because I've seen these things printed umpteen times, I feel I owe you an explanation. Nelson Piquet's real name is Nelson Piquet Sotomayor.
Yeah.
And he chose to drop the Sotomayor so that his parents didn't know he was racing and call himself Nelson Piquet. So what was that again? Will you read that one again?
A mediocre season for Nelson Piquet, as he is now known and always has been.
Well, he's now known as Nelson Piquet as opposed to Nelson Piquet Sotomayor, and always has been because he's never been called anything else. Have you got it?
And Mansell's in front of everyone in this race, apart from the two in front of him. I like that one, I have to say.
The car in front is absolutely unique, except for the one behind it, which is identical.
Is it hard to commentate? Do you sometimes think, oh, God, what about
Well, you've just made me realise how difficult it is, actually, Jeremy.
Yeah. But nobody seems to mind. That's the important thing. There was a recent poll, wasn't there, in the newspapers, and 78% of people said, we want you to stay on.
A couple of them had a go at me, and they did a poll, you know, should the old fool stay or should the old fool go? And 78% of them said the old fool should stay, so I was very happy about that.
Well, we've come up with our favourite Murrayism, okay? And I've had it framed. Really, because I wanted to say thank you for bringing so much entertainment and happiness for me, because I do love Formula One, over the years. Big thing was, though, who were we going to get it to present it to you? And there was no one else, really. The only man to leave you speechless. Damon Hill!
Let me read this out first, mate. You better have a seat, actually. The Murrayism Award. And now excuse me while I interrupt myself.
Ladies and gentlemen, Murray Walker! Thank you very much for watching. Have a great Christmas. Bye!
And you can see how Jeremy dispatched many of his guests and suffered himself at the hands of some in the Best of Clarkson 2000 this Wednesday night at 10:40 here on BBC Two.